trivia, baby!
Oh! Dude, and you definitely wrote this one.
Nice.
Lay it on me! Lay it on me! Question.
Claude.
Is asshole. Why
Shez.
hate?
Oh, because
Claude.
he's a bastard man! That's what it is!
Let me start off by saying I think Golden Deer are the best house in Three Houses by all metrics. Individual units from the Golden Deer might be worse in their comparisons, but I do think the whole is greater than the sum of their parts. I also think Verdant Wind is the closest thing to a golden ending for Fodlan, plenty of bias in that statement because of course Golden Deer were the first house I picked. The death of Dimmy and Dudu, which probably leads to the dissolution of Fargus, is a tragedy, but that's war, man. You can't save everyone. You kill the Slitherers, fight one of the most unique final bosses in the series, and with the Leicester Alliance already being much less traditional than the other countries, they are the right people to lead the new world born from the ashes of war. So Three Hopes comes out, and having also played the previous Fire Emblem Warriors game and finding it mediocre, especially with how Marth isn't given the time of day in favour of Fate's Wank, which was the style at the time, Hopes looked to fix a big issue I had with the first iteration. Keep in mind I'm by no means in with the Warriors franchise, I played a tiny bit of Hyrule Warriors as well, and that's it. Anyway, getting to pick and use characters I like almost immediately was a good start, and seeing everyone's at the time unique movesets, everything was looking up. Surely this will be a mindless button-mashing romp with my favourite house with plenty of levity, bonding friendship and reliance on each other's strength. Things certainly won't degrade such that the route will deserve colourful monikers like Golden Trashfire, The Gang Destroys Fodlan, and Claude, what in the fuck are you doing?
Part 1.
Golden Wildfire occupies such a disappointment in my mind, and it stems from one major event which brought about the ruin of everything that came before and after. This event happens at the start of Part 2, much later than I remember. The prologue and Part 1 are honestly reasonable. The Deer are minding their own business and keeping with their established characters, and Hopes actually does a good job of looking at them through a narrower lens. I think it's to be praised that the routes in Hopes actually are different rather than having far too much crossover like in Houses. The game has the time and ability to focus on the particulars of the Deer. For example, the Great Bridge of Murden is just something that both the Deer and Lions have to go through as part of the war because the routes are the same. In Hopes, it's an integral part of the early stage of the war, specifically between the Empire and Alliance. Just because the timeline is very different doesn't mean it can't be a potential insight into the happenings of the war and internal politics we missed out on in Houses.
Reinforcements already arrived. Then I have no other option. House Gloucester hereby swears fealty to the Empire. Cease fighting and throw down your weapons. Further resistance is futile.
Another simple example of the effect of this narrow focused lens is Holst. You know Holst, Hilda's older brother and Grand Defender against the Almirans. If you think about it, outside of gameplay reasons, why would Hilda bear Freykugel into the war when surely Holst could use it to better repel Almiran insurgency? Hopes answers this very well.
Fear not, Holst Sigisvald Goneril has arrived. I shall deliver Deirdre from the hands of the enemy.
Holst is a sword master, bears no crest, and has an anti-flyer sword, a good choice against axe-wielding wyvern riders. That makes a lot of sense. That's coherent, logical reasoning within the rules of the world. This does, however, create another problem, but we'll leave that for later. Further, in the initial stages of the war, when Count Gloucester surrenders the Bridge of Murden, it is for some very politically savvy reasons, and through his actions we get further understanding of Lawrence as a character, and a little bit of world building as to how the Gloucester house is so important, beyond its geographical closeness to the Empire. The Alliance is then fully justified in their counterattack, not just because Edelgard is wrong, and double wrong because she was stupid enough to declare war against the entire fucking continent at once in Hopes, but because if they are successful in their objective, to seize the breadbasket of the Empire, it secures the future of the Alliance and potentially cuts deep into the war effort of the Empire, possibly even pausing the war. All this takes place in 1182, while the war we see in Houses is in 1185, and it all could have potentially taken place with slight variation. Speaking of things that could have happened, though I want to say probably didn't, let's talk about fratricide. Part 1 falls apart with a Deus Ex Machina against our protagonists. The Almirans are invading while the Empire is crusading, and there is a full retreat to deal with the uppity little bastards.
How dare you challenge me?
The uppitiest of the bastards is Prince Shithead, and he is dealt with like so.
I never wanted things between us to end this way. I'm so sorry, brother.
Now I do remember this, and my feelings first time around was mostly, it had to be done, or that's probably for the best. Without further context, that's fair, but with the context of Part 2, this clearly marks some sort of twisted change in Claude. Either this didn't happen in the events of Houses, or Byleth had such a positive influence on Claude that fratricide doesn't really dampen his spirits on the whole New Dawn and Fodlan thing Claude is supposed to be all about. In this case, something wrong awakens within him and festers for about 6 months before he begins to make every wrong decision imaginable, starting with shaking hands with the devil.
I, Claude von Regan, King of the Leicester Federation, hereby swear this
What
pact.
do you think you're doing, you absolute... Okay, I have to put my cards on the table about Edelgard. Yes, that's how I pronounce it, I know I'm wrong. She's the villain. She's not evil, and she does have justification for her actions, but there are 2 major aspects that lead me to believe this. The first is she sides with the Slitherers, or Agarthans, because I'm not going to fuck up that word reading off the script, and they're evil. Edelgard should be privy to the fact that they are evil because they shunted the Crest of Flames into her. No, it doesn't matter that they are a temporary ally, and it matters only a little that she couldn't possibly know that the Agarthans are the ancient enemies of the church she seeks to destroy. Maybe she does, but I don't recall any mention of that in Scarlet Blaze, and I'm never going to play Crimson Flower. The second reason is overall the Church and Rhea are good. Yes, there's been some shady shit like the 4 Apostles and Rite of Rising and who knows how long ongoing creation of homunculi to act as vessels for the goddess. Rhea isn't doing all that for selfless reasons. The goddess seems fairly benevolent and has brought protection and restoration to the world in the past, but that's not why Rhea wants her back. The Church, and this is where Claude comes in, also have no problem with accepting foreigners, outsiders, or people who generally choose not to believe in the Church. Shamir and Cyril, for example, both foreigners, neither have any strong feelings on the Church or Knights, but they serve Rhea dutifully. Neither bear crests, and no one treats them poorly because of their origins. Quite why Cyril isn't playable in Hopes is strange, but whatever. Then Claude comes in with a victim complex whining about being an outsider and crests determining your place in the world and nonsensical hate for Rhea for no reason. Now I'm going to jump way ahead, but I want to address this now.
Chosen to side with Edelgard. I am disappointed in you, Claude.
No hard feelings, Rhea. I'm just determined to see what the world would be like without you.
The world without Rhea is fucking Elmira, you dumb cunt, where your people are flung into a meat grinder by uncaring or ignorant rulers to accomplish nothing. And to suggest that Crest's determined value is hypocrisy and willful ignorance of evidence directly in front of him. Judith, Nadir and Holst are all celebrated people either of the entirety of Leicester or Claude himself. Judith is the hero of Daphnel, Holst is Leicester's mightiest hero, Nadir is Claude's inside man of Elmira. None bear crests, all are incredibly important to Claude, and he still can't see he's in the wrong on all the exclusion he perceives in Fodlan. I enjoy this little comic, but if there was a Hopes version, Claude would do the exact same things as Edelgard and say this is Rhea's fault, or something witty. So, Claude is a hypocrite who, in Houses, has one thing in common with Edelgard, a new dawn for Fodlan. The war stokes his ambition, and with the help of Byleth he succeeds. In Hopes, that first part happens, but without Byleth and with the Agarthan plant that is Shez behind him, you can completely destroy Fodlan. Getting back to the point of the video, it all starts with an act of betrayal, selfishness and idiocy. I could potentially abide all that, but then you have to kill Catherine.
I will never let you lay a finger on Lady Rhea with those filthy hands.
Part 2.
I fucking hate this, and this permanently soured me on Golden Wildfire and very nearly the entirety of Hopes. I have the best taste in Fire Emblem girls, so Catherine is my favourite Three Houses girl, and unavoidably you have to kill her. From this point on, my first playthrough was a bit of a blur because I was pretty fucking upset, and it's not like the game or story is brilliantly engaging. In fact, it's the opposite, and maybe the game is so mind-numbing so you don't question how much of a bastard man Claude is being. And this does fall solely on Claude, as he took the responsibility of being the now Federation's king and having full authority. I also think this is purely a bastard man move, because in no route in Houses does the idea of a Federation come up in Leicester, nor do we really see any strife brought about by the bickering great houses, but I'll grant that Houses is 3 years later, so maybe the heirs got their shit together over the course of the stalemate. The other turning point of Golden Wildfire where you can really ruin everything is the Recruit Byleth mission, which immediately follows, and this mission varies between routes, but each one does require you to think a little bit, which is at odds with the Warriors format. I've done it both ways, and if you want to ruin everything, ignore the bonus objective and just fight Byleth. This will make an enemy of the goddess and her vessel, which is significantly more dangerous than pissing off the church and knights, though Claude has already done that too. As a direct result of all of Claude's bad decisions, and by extension you the players I guess, this happens. This is Claude's fault. Directly. Nobody else's. Byleth swings the sword, but Claude set it into motion. So yes, Claude is a fuck up, and is now going to have to bear the weight of Judith's death on his conscience forever. Except clearly by this point he doesn't fucking have a conscience. As events continue, objectively worse things happen to deliver the destruction of Fodlan into the hands of the Agarthans, including a scheme to separate Rhea and the Church from the Lions, which is the climax of the route. Before we hit that and I label Claude for what he truly is, let's talk about Shez.
I want a dual wield!
Shez leaves us with far more questions than answers, and all of them relate to Arval. Shez himself is just a smooth-brained fight man who doesn't really guide Claude or anyone anywhere. In the case of the Lions, all Shez does is echo or at best begin sentiments of loyalty and support for Dimmy, but at no point that I remember does Shez suggest something and Dimmy and his goobers go for it. Similarly with Claude, when he fucks up, Shez is first to admonish him, which is good, and given Shez's room temperature and Celsius IQ, makes a surprisingly good point about how disposable everyone else might be to Claude. For obvious reasons the story cannot play out like this, but Shez and several deer have justification to walk out on Claude and never look back. Shez is just there, a vessel, to get the stupid story continuing. As for Arval, we just don't know. The closest thing I had to fun is that mission where it's you versus max level house leaders, and that mission where you play as Arval, and Nemesis gets one of two completely offhand mentions. What's Arval's deal? The only thing I can say for certainty about Arval is he's the Agarthan ploy to destroy Sothis, which will in turn destroy Fodlan. Maybe he truly believes in
partner in destiny.
But when he takes over Shez, that's been erased in favour of his higher purpose.
It's over!
Arval seems to be a sort of Agarthan progenitor, like Sothis, but there's a mention of his consciousness being passed through the ages, so he's also the pinnacle of Agarthan science and magic. I've written in the script clearly, but it's not very clear, that there's a relationship between Zaharas and Arval. It's kind of like his specific dimension, but it also seems way easier to break out of in Hopes, because you just kill Arval and out you go. Arval can apparently draw Shez in and out of the dimension at will, or maybe even it's just his mind, but if someone is put there, he can't do anything about it. Arval is already dead in Houses, probably, so Zaharas is completely empty and works better. I can't draw any conclusions from Arval's sentence-long mention of Talus in the paralogue, and Talus recognising what Arval or Shez is in the one route where they meet. You don't need to answer every question, especially not in a mindless Warriors game, but the rest of the story is sloppy and poorly thought out, and Arval, while likeable enough, is a symptom of writing not quite thought all the way through. So, the final mission. Rhea makes her last stand as the Immaculate One, and for no reason because the objective was to split the Church and Kingdom, which has already happened, you fight and eventually kill Rhea just like Crimson Flower. In Scarlet Blaze, Rhea and Talus kill each other, and there's the retarded high five scene. This is a better ending for Fodlan because at least the head of the snake has been cut off, re Agarthans more than Rhea. So, the goddess has been killed, her aggrieved daughter stands to fight on the Tailtean Plains because she has nothing left, but history doesn't repeat on the Tailtean Plains. This time Claude gets what he wants. Rhea is dead. Leading his elites into battle against Nabateans with weapons born of their blood and bone, Claude becomes the new king of liberation.
It is now 1183, Blue Sea Moon. The Federation has joined with the Empire to invade the Holy Kingdom of Fargus. Claude sought not to conquer the kingdom, but to destroy the Central Church. After Archbishop Rhea's defeat, the Church has lost much of its martial prowess. Tensions continue between the Empire and Kingdom. Having now reached his goal, Claude proposes an end to the war, yet it remains uncertain if either side will accept.
You know what this end scroll really says? Great job, fuckface. The war is going to continue, the future is grim, the continent will tear itself apart, and it's all your fault. Let's assume the war goes on until 1185. Byleth is sleeping forever. The Agarthans have no Nabateans to contend with, and the beasts they hate will be weary from 5 years of fighting. The world is theirs. Evil wins, and it's all because of Claude. Too bad about the whole New Dawn and Fodlan thing, huh, you fucking mong? To sum up, play Hopes if you like, and if you can find it discounted, and if you like Three Houses, but depending on if you agree with how I feel about Fodlan, skip the grief of playing Golden, fuck you Claude you fucking asshole, Wildfire, and play Lions instead. You get the deal without King Retard, and Catherine lives, which is the most important thing to me. If you don't like Rhea and the Church, Scarlet Blaze bends over backwards to justify Edelgard, so maybe you'll find something there.